Today, we are here to learn about debugging and monitoring in PowerApps. Before I go into debugging and monitoring in PowerApps, a quick introduction about me. Who am I? I'm Krishna. I have 16 years of experience in IT. I am a PowerApps community super user from last 1.5 year, and I'm top contributor from last top 10 contributor from last 1 year. And I'm a proven Power Apps and Power Platform lead. I've contributed 280 plus solutions in the community. I'm a Office 365 local user group event speaker, and recently I have started YouTube from last 8 months, and I have around 30 free videos out there which speaks about various scenarios in these in related to Power Apps. Okay, coming to the agenda of today's meeting. What is debugging and monitoring, and why we should know about it? How to enable monitoring in Power Apps, how to debug a Power Apps in development, debugging a Power App running in production, which is huge. Last but not least, collaborating with the QA team to reproduce the error on a published app. Let me take a minute. Why should I know and what is a debugging and what is monitoring in Power Apps? We all know that Power App is not a IDE. It runs in a browser. What do you mean by a browser? I don't have a IDE for Power Apps like the way how our friend had shown just before Arpit. It is running in a browser. It is not something like a Visual Studio or something. So if I had to debug, usually all these debugging stuff will come with F8 and F9 column keys. But if I use F9 on a browser, it works as a browser, but it doesn't debug my code. How do I debug my code? Debugging code in Power Apps has various ways. Okay, so we will learn all the ways, and debugging means I need to understand the code intricately step by step. We all have experience in the IT, and when we see that, we have to hand over code from one resource to another resource. And when it comes from one resource to another resource, what happens is okay, Krishna had implemented a logic, and now it is turned for Arpit to extend the logic. Arpit doesn't know what Krishna had implemented, so Arpit had to debug or to understand the code what Krishna had implemented. How does that happens is only by understanding the code by going line by line. It is very hard to understand a code where you don't have debugging option. That we will understand now, and what are all the ways we will understand. What is monitoring? Debugging can only be possible if you are a maker or if you have authority to look at the code, which is nothing but a co-owner in Power Apps, Power Apps environment. Monitoring means that I don't have to have the co-owner access. As long as it is shared with me, I can understand how the stuff is going on, and how the flow is going on. If there are any exceptions, if there are any issues, I can always see that, which we will understand how we can do that. Last but not least, how to enable, we will come to know. So without any further delay, I'm going on to Power Apps Maker portal. And I have created an app which is to show debugging and monitoring, how we can do that. Oops, I could have opened the app by now. I'm sorry about that. Okay, I have created an app with multiple screens, say like 6 screens I have. But before I go there, the second step is how to enable monitoring. monitoring don't have to enable explicitly. It is part of this advanced tools. When you go to Power Apps Maker Studio, on the left hand rail there is something called advanced tool. Go to advanced tool, there is something called monitor. Out of the box is available. Monitor was there for about 1 year as a experimental tool, and Microsoft had spent quality time to address all the challenges what the end users or Mackers are experiencing, and they have fixed all the issues. And early January 2021, they made it as generally available. And we all know that the cycle, how they go, is that they will first give it as a preview, and it goes as they will give it as experimental, it will go as a preview, preview, experimental, and then general availability. So when it says general availability means all the bugs have been resolved and it is fully functional and we are good to use it. So when I click on open monitor, it automatically opens another tab which is associated with the Maker window, which is nothing but at the development window. And let's spend some time and understand what are all the various columns and information we are getting when we are doing debugging or monitoring on a app. If you see here, ID, ID is something we don't have to worry about it. Next one is time, at what time this particular action or event occurred. Next category, which category is this event. It logs up each and every event happening on Power App. We will see that in a minute. And before that, I just wanted to spend each and every in a column. And here I have two columns: result info and status and result. What are these three columns? These are three, and response time, response size, and duration. These are very, very important. What are those is resource info, result info is what is the result we are getting when we are calling a particular action. Okay. And another option is it also has details and formula. What it does is when I see various events getting added onto this, each and every event, I can expand and I can see what is the formula behind that particular action and what are all the details coming. And it in fact adds two more tabs in the real time. Okay, let us see how it does. I just open the monitor, and when I start previewing the app, it starts adding each and every element. Now I don't have anything. If I see that as part of this particular screen, what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the manager of a given email address. When I click on get manager, I got this manager name for that. And if you see here, it added all the actions here. It already added all the actions here. Let us see what I mean exactly by when I select this particular action event. What happened is it added two more columns. As I said, one is request and the other one is response. What And when I go to here, the beauty with debugging is it clearly highlights which part of the formula it is executed or it is monitored. In this action, though I have so much of the formula, so many lines of code, it clearly highlighted, hey, I am looking at only this particular piece out of this entire logic. So, and what is the request? This is the request. It is an XML which is showing up. This is the call, and it also shows the result. What is the result? This is the header and this is the body. It is calling a graph API to get the user details from Office 365 user data source. Okay, let us spend some more time on this to understand what it is. If you see here, it clearly shows this is a number, sequence number, and this is the time which the event got occurred. And what is the category? It's a network call. It is not a user action. What is a user action? If you see here, I clicked on this and I selected on the screen. If you see it again added one more, because whatever a user clicks, mouse clicks are all user actions. And if it is a function, it will show a function. We will discuss what is this function all about. And This is the operation, whether it is a select operation or it is calling to a data source. What is the particular operation it is performing, and what is, whether it is a success or a failure. And result info is the information which wherein I can add my custom information, or Microsoft is adding the result information, whether it is how many rows got selected, how many rows got updated, how many rows got deleted when we are performing operation against a data source. And status is 200 and 400. We all know that 200 means success and 400 means error. And how many milliseconds time this particular call spent, it is 94 milliseconds. And here it clearly shows what it is doing and on against what it is doing. It is doing a call against Office 365 users, but whereas here it is performing an operation on the collection. It is clear collect is the operation which is performing, and it is performing against a collection. And where it is doing, as soon as user clicks on button get manager, which is nothing but I clicked on get manager button, right? So that is when this particular action is called, and it is performing the operation, or it is acting upon this collection, whereas it is calling this data source which is Office 365 users. And what is the property it is getting? It is getting image property, and the response size is 957, whereas here it is it is getting the response size high, because this time it is returning the entire image as the return data for the user to show image on the app. So this is how I can understand how the calls are going. But which is great, Krishna, how it is going to help me. That's the point, right? If we learn something, how it is going to help me. Okay, when I am when I run the same app in production, say that, Krishna, I got I got the output. No, no, okay, this is very clear. But when I run the same thing with this account, when I say get, I got nothing. Say like there is no manager. I have handled the expression exception, so I see this error. But why it is not there? Why I don't have the manager for this? I don't have a clue. So if I run the same into the maker time and say get manager, I got the error. But if I go back and it clearly shows what is the issue, why I'm not able to see the exception here, why I'm not able to see the manager here. When I go to here, it shows that, hey, the resource manager does not exist, or its queried qualification was not. So I know why I don't see the message, because it was not configured at the database level, which is meaning that Azure level, they have not configured manager for that, and clearly shows the call got failed. And as I said, 404, which is exception or error message. And it is, and if you see earlier, it said like one row selected, and here not found. So this is how I can understand whether my call or the operation is success or failure. If it is failure, even failure also I can see why it got failed. Is it like my expression issue, or my call, the data source itself is not existed? Everything I can understand by looking at this event. And another thing is that if the log or trace is huge, and I wanted to understand how many network calls I'm making in particular action, how do I know that? Is I can even filter my trace or transaction with a particular event. I wanted to see only network calls. I can filter it out. If I wanted to see all the calls, and now I want to see how many errors I got during this action, I can filter it out. And another beauty is I can even upload or download the transcript and I can pass it over to I can pass it over to my developer. When and why we need it is, imagine that I am doing a code review for my peer. And when I'm doing that, I need to ensure that my developer or my friend who is doing the development understand where and all I'm getting exceptions and where and all I'm taking long time and too many network calls on what operations the app is taking too many calls, because we as a maker, it is our responsibility to ensure that app is performant at any point of time. How does that is possible is, it is only possible if I ensure that my app is performant with less number of network calls and it is not taking huge time on the network calls. And if you notice here, the minimum amount of seconds it is milliseconds it is spending is 177. It is the max because it has to get that. So this is how I can clearly understand whether my app is performant or not performant. And if I had to send this transcript, I can always click on download. When I click on download, it just downloads a JSON format. I can just send it to I can download that JSON and send it to my colleague, say like, hey, Krishna, I have validated your code and I see a huge number of network calls you are making, or huge number of seconds it is taking when I'm doing a particular action. Please look into it. And here is the transcript for your information, which is absolutely good. That is going on. Then what are these other options? What is invite here? That is when actually the next step of debugging comes. Before we go there, let us see some of the common mistakes what we do when we are implementing the apps, and why we shouldn't do that. In this screen, what I'm doing is I'm filtering my data source and I'm also showing user profile picture as part of my result set. But remember, I did not do anything. What I did is I just traversed through the screens, but it started adding all the various calls, and it also added a trace log with network calls. Why it added these many network calls is, I have used user profile picture property and I'm showing as part of my gallery. Remember, when user asks you to add a user profile picture as part of the gallery, try to convince them not to add it. If they are seriously wanted it, then end of the day, user is super mighty. So we'll have to add it. But the issue is, when you add this profile picture as part of your gallery, what happens is you will have to call Office 365 users group, which is going to be a network call on each and every row. It will go on call, which is why I have this many number of search user network calls. Okay, so which is a definitely a performance hit and the app will perform low. So try to convince the user if you could convince. If you cannot convince and they're very clear that they need it, it's up to them. But when you see that I didn't do anything, but it added this many number of calls, and if I just clear the data and say that if I run against that and I say module, it filtered out with 5 rows. And if I come here again, it added search user 1, 2, 3, 4, because I have this many number of rows and it added. Okay, so always remember, it's keep on adding. It's still loading. Usually the transcript take a little time, probably 4 5 seconds it takes. So it is this is how number of calls it is making. Another common mistake we all do is that as and when we include a text box in Power App, there is a property called delay load. You delay output. Usually it comes as false. Remember, if it comes as false, when especially when we are adding a filter on top of a gallery from text box, what happens is what I'm doing in the gallery filter items property, I'm filtering the data source with the start with property of my text box. If I don't do that, if I don't disable that delay property, delay output is false. See what happens if I just say that text input one dot text, and if I go out and say see the reciprocation rate, say key RISHNA. The time I type in the text box, it is reciprocating onto the label. I see Rahman raise the hand. Any question, Rahman, for me? Rahman, do I have any question? Okay. So it is reciprocating immediately. What does that mean is it is immediately sending the data back to the back to the place wherever I am using this control. But if I just don't say delay output as false, if I say delay output true, what it does is it wait for user to stop entering the data, which means that KRISHNA. Now I wait, then only it started reciprocating onto the label, which is what exactly I did. If I don't do that, and if I just, if you see here, I say delay and it is true. As of now, when I say false for the same call and say clear the data, and if I just remove this and I say MOD, every time it makes a call, every time it makes a call and it will go to data source and it will get the data, because I am immediately sending the data. If you see here, it just showed 6 rows because M itself got called up, and MODULE space 1. So every keystroke, it will go to data source and it will get the data. And if you see here, this many number of network calls it is making. So this is again one more performant issue which we are not, which we have to ensure that I am not using it. And how do I come to know? I will come to know only if I start using debugging and monitoring tool. Usually I don't know whether it is going back or coming in. And if I use monitoring tool, I will know that how many network calls I'm making while I'm filtering the data against the gallery. That is how that is the beauty when we use debugging and monitoring to understand whether the debugging is happening smoothly or it has any issues. Next step is, let us understand what is this invite is stands for. When you click on invite, it'll ask you to invite a person. Remember, invite is to understand with what is happening on my app. When I click on invite, I can add another person to invite and see, hey, you also join and see what is happening and look at my transcript, whether the transcript is uh, showing the accurate data or not. Okay. Now here I'm calling Mr. David Wilson, and in order to do that, this particular invite only be available for next 60 minutes. If it is more than 60 minutes, which means that the session get expired and user can only come on to this session by providing this link. Click on this link and paste it over here and say D Wilson at, sorry. If you notice, it is the session with Wilson, but the Wilson did not open the app. Wilson can monitor the event log. So in order this to happen, Wilson should be shared with this app. Now, if I notice here, this one is monitoring is opened with Wilson. This one is Wilson session, and that one is Krishna session. Let me pull it down. Oh God, where did it go? I'm sorry. This is Wilson. Sorry guys, my window got minimized and I couldn't even see that where it is. I'm extremely sorry. I'm just opening up real quick. I just wanted to show you side by side that how debugging event log or trace transcript is coming for both the users at the same time. The advantage with this one is why this element is important is when my testing team QA team is complaining that a particular action is not working. Usually what happens is when we are configuring with data source, what happens is we will configure with a particular account clearly, and when I pass the same app to QA team, at times they don't get a option to see all the data the way how user or a developer is looking at the data. Now, I'm just running the app and say that if you notice here, I can see the transcript here. Also, I have added another additional information stating that who is who is the logged in user. The logged in user is Krishna here. And if I come over here, I can also see who is the logged in user here. But the reason why it is showing logged in user as Krishna here is David did not log on to the app. David is only monitoring the transcript of each and every action. What is that user performing and how this is going on and how many calls it is making. So this is how I can share my uh, app only the transcript. This time I'm sharing only that, hey, monitor that this is taking this many number of calls. I can say that and the developer can see, oh yeah, I do agree. This is making this many number of calls. I will have to look into that particular action. Okay. This is how I can make it. This is cool. Okay. I can invite that, which is happening fine. Now the next step is how can I debug or how can I monitor an app which is completely in production? If you see here, on the app, I can also enable monitor. When I click on monitor, now this time I'm monitoring on a production app, correct? I'm closing this event. Now, this time the menu options are little different. I have invite. I also have connect user. I have another option as play published app. Remember, in order to monitor or to understand the transcript of a published app, you have to click on play published app over here. If you are running an app by clicking on play button here, you cannot understand the monitoring. You cannot understand. You cannot enable debugging and monitor trace on that app. You have to click on play published app. When you click on play published app, it clearly shows that you are connecting to a monitor debug session. This is those in this session will see event generated by the app including any data. Remember, it also shows the data because when I go to this element with the particular call, and I can also see what is the output. And if you notice here, this time I see the logged in user as Krishna Sudhi. How I am doing that, I will show you in a minute. How I'm adding this, I will show you in a minute. And coming to here, when I just say Krishna, I got this. And it also shows that, hey boss, your event is getting logged and recorded. So what, I can see each and every element here. Again, the same downloading, I can download all the transcript and I can share it to whoever I want to share it. And then they can analyze that transcript and each and every action, whatever it is, whatever it performed during this particular session time. And next step is, if I just go here, there is no change, but only this time I can monitor on a published app. Even the published app also, I can see what is happening. This is very important. When I push the app into UAT or production and user started complaining, how I can know that user is not looking at the data is, this is the only way I can see that, oh sorry, a particular user X is not able to see the data because for that user and so call, the request is getting failed because the reason is, this is the reason. I can see resource not found. And if the resource is there, if you see here, one row got selected and it is the formula. And if I come on to this, I can also see the response. This is what I mean. It also shows whatever the data it is returning from the user call. So if the data is sensitive, we have to be vigilant while we are doing that. Okay, now this is very good, but we know that this particular element or this particular call is working smoothly for any other user. And I wanted to test that whether that is working today or even that also got failed. How I can do that is, I can say like connect to user. This time I'm calling Carson. Whom all the app got shared with. Okay, Ron. Mr. Ron is there. Ron, I'm calling Ron. This time also this link will only work for next 60 minutes. I'm copying this and see the difference. If I just say connect and use this, how it will behave. And if I don't, if I invite, how it will behave. It is asking you to join that monitoring because this time Ron is not looking at the transcript. Ron is also participating on the same time where Krishna is performing and my end user is performing. Now, when I click on join, it clearly shows that, hey, you are joining to a session where the events are getting logged. Are you sure you want to join? When I click on join, it adds Krishna also onto the same session where uh, uh, Shravani, do you guys see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen, Krishna.
Okay, because I see Shravani all of a sudden into the picture. Sorry about that. Okay, I see that this is also getting recorded and it clearly shows the same message. But if you see the debugging monitor here this time, monitor this time, it clearly shows who is logged into the system here. Now I see a session which is running on top of Ron account. It is not running on top of Krishna's account. I should see whose session it is. So then only I know whether it is working properly or not. Now I click on VSP in this one is got failed. And if I go back to my monitor, it clearly shows that, okay, this action is uh, completely not working, whether it is to end user or to my fellow developer also. And I know that which is working with this event. This is how I can understand whether this is the issue with only the end user, or the event or that particular logic itself is not working for me. So here we learned how to debug at the time of development, how to monitor at the time of development, and how to monitor when how to look at the trace or transcript when the app is in UAT, and my UAT team is complaining, the QA team is complaining that particular action is not working. How I can ask the UAT team or QA team to add me also at the time on the same debug and monitoring. They can add me by clicking on invite. But if I want to debug or monitor a production app, I know how I can do, which is using the play published app. And that time I have to ask the end user to include me also to see that whether it is working for me or not by clicking on connect user, which is fine. Very good. What are the other ways to debug the app is the best way, and the good friend of debugging is always remember, when we highlight a particular formula in the formula bar, it immediately shows a quick view or a preview of that formula. Then and there, it shows whether the data is coming up or not. This will show whether I'm getting the data or not when I have data in that. When I say Krishna, I have the data. Now, if I go back to this on button click, and if I highlight that, it clearly shows whether the data is coming or not. Or if I just highlight it, it shows you what is the data it is coming inside that. And if I just highlight that, whether the data is there or not, this is one other way how I can get that. Another way is that very traditional way is add a label and see whether the data is existed in that or not. I can say like count rows of collection user profile. It clearly shows, okay, there is some data. This is another way. Use most of the makers understand that whether I'm getting the data from my call or whether I have data at the collection level or not. This is the second way. And another way is that I was telling you, there is something called a trace function. This using this function, I can add custom messages as part of my debugger or my trace log. If you see here, this one is getting added because I have added a trace function everywhere. It shows that I'm at this step, so and so step, and whatever it is. I wanted to say that. Now if I want to say one more trace as trace requested user information, just to differentiate whether it is out of the box information or my information, I have added a star, a 3 star. And if I run this app and say click get manager, and if I go to monitor, now this time it should add 3 more stars. It usually takes time. Okay, sorry, this is a published session. And if I come here, it see that requested information. This is how I can understand where the exact control. See, the compiler is at what level it went through. Now, if I want to understand whether this up to here my logic is qualified or not, I can only by doing this trace event. I can add any number of trace events as part of my event log or my transcript. What happens is it keep on adding the elements at my uh, trace. Next question comes is, Krishna, this monitoring is only for Canvas app? No, it is not only Canvas app. I can even do the monitoring or debugging on my model driven apps also. How I can do that is, in order to show you, let me move on to my other environment, which is COE dev. What is COE? Center of Excellence tool. I have configured Center of Excellence on my tenant. How to, if someone of you interested to know how to configure that, I have explained clearly how to configure Center of Excellence on Power Platform step by step on my YouTube channel, which I'll share you link to my YouTube channel at end of the session. So when I go to apps and say model driven app. When I go to model driven app, see here, even for model driven app also I have monitor. When I click on monitor, I can now run the model driven app with the published app. And if you notice here, it clearly shows what is this session, model driven app session. And here it shows that it is a studio session because it is running on top of the user maker time. And when I come here, it is a published app session. But this time it is not showing you what app it is because it is a canvas app, and it also shows you what are all the various versions of the app. Looks like this functionality got broke. Okay. And now if I click on published app, it will open my published model driven app. I repeat, it is running on top of model driven app, and it shows up it again, the same old functionality. When we are doing a monitoring on top of a published app, it always wants that, hey, you are doing a monitoring on top of a published app. Are you sure? When I click on join, it shows that. And if you notice here, this is the dashboard. It comes with when I configure the center of excellence, like how many environments are there, how many flow makers are there, how many makers are there. And when I go on to now I go on to monitor, see that it clearly shows each and every operation. It is in fact now this time it is fetch operation, it is XML operation, it is each and every event gets add clearly. And if I just go on to next one, apps, it shows all the apps which are there as part of my environment. If I click on environment, it shows us what are all the various environments there at my tenant. These are all the environments I have at my tenant. And if I come back to here, each and every user click and actions get add even at the model driven app also. And even on the model driven app also, same old behavior. I can invite the other person, but in model driven app, if you notice here, I don't have connect here. That is the only difference when you compare with model driven app and a classic canvas app. Here I can also invite. Remember, when we invite, what happens? Then another user or another resource can also monitor this event or a transcript, how the events are happening, where my app is making more network calls. Makers, I strongly advise you start adopting onto monitoring and debugging, because this is the only element helps you to improvise the performance of your app. If you do not adapt to this and if you implement app, and end of the day what happens is the performance, if the performance of the app is not up to the mark, how do you know? Is this is the only friend we have in Power Apps to understand how it is going and how it is performing in Power Apps. So this is how I can ensure how the things are going. And what is next is, in future Microsoft is trying to add monitoring the variables and monitors as part of this monitor and debugging tool. What is monitoring variables? At this stage, I am only able to monitor the a particular call. But if I want to monitor a collection, what is that collection is storing and what is the collection data inside a collection data, that is also they are planning. If you notice here, I don't see what is inside a collection. If I come on to this studio session, all I see is that user actions and network calls, but I cannot see what is there in a particular variable or particular collection. So Microsoft is extending the monitoring and debugging tool to add variables and collections also as part of that, which is going to come very soon. The last one is adding a watch feature on top of monitoring and debugging. What is that watch feature is, those who have experience with Visual Studio, we have a feature called adding monitoring on top of the particular variable. What happens is it shows the data change at the real time. When I go from one step to another step, it shows whether the data got changed or not. That kind of watchdog they are going to add in Power Apps also. Now it comes to the questions and answers part. And this is my YouTube channel. You can scan this QR code and you can go on to my YouTube channel. I have around 30 videos there where I'm explaining COA setup. And in fact, I have covered most scenarios as part of the YouTube channel video where how I can do debugging on various other scenarios. Those who are interested to look into that, please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel to further all further notifications. Okay, now comes to question and answer. Anybody have any question?
Thank you, Krishna. Wow. Well, I think everyone got what they expected. So very informative. And I think Prue is asking a question. He's saying, "Hi, Krishna. Thank you for your informative session. If my Canvas app was embedded in model-driven app CRM form and getting the record context into PowerApps, how do we debug and monitor in such a scenario?"
I think I have covered by showing the monitoring app, monitoring
Yes, you have. Yes.
model driven app. Yes, it is very much possible, and we know that how to do that. Now, any other question apart from this session? If you have any questions about Power Apps, I can tell you. As you know that I'm a Power App Microsoft MVP. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask me. I can answer all your questions.
So there
And
you
this
have it,
is
guys. So Krishna is offering for the next 10 minutes. Any questions for Power Apps? Fantastic offer there, Krishna. Thank you so much. So could everybody, now's your chance. So if there's any outstanding questions, please share them now in the chat window. Now is your opportunity. So Krishna, correct me if I'm wrong. So are you accepting questions just on debugging Power Apps or on anything related to
open.
Power
I'm
Apps?
open. I'm open.
He is
Rajesh.
open. His doors are open. His arms are open, wide open, and he's willing to accept any questions, guys. So Prue is asking, will it log the Canvas app as well as in model-driven app? So I think Prue, who asked the original question, he's asking it again, I think.
Yes, it logs both the actions, both the transcript pro, because the thing is when you enable that, it logs each and every action or each and every element what is there on the screen. So I am monitoring at the app level. So when I'm doing that, what happens is it will show and log all the events. It depends on you and me how we define inside my app. If I want to know which particular on a particular action, which action it is going, we always have to add using the trace log so that I know this particular event is coming from Canvas app. As I had shown you the trace function, using the trace function, we will know that which call is coming from which element, which app.
Thank you. So any more? For any more? Jatin, amazing session, Krishna. Thank you so much. There's Victor. Victor's online. Hi there, Victor. Awesome. So we got Victor online as well. Okay, so Jabir is saying, is there any way to only log the errors?
Only log the errors? Unfortunately, no. As of today, debugging and monitoring logs each and every action, and it logs each and every transcript. However, I can filter only the errors by using that filter which I had shown you just before.
Great. Okay.
It logs flat on all the actions, but unfortunately because monitoring is something, it monitors in each and every element. For how many days these logs got stored, like if I want to look, oh, unfortunately it is only session level, uh, Suyesh. It is only at session level. When you close the session, it will just go out. uh, how can I delete a collection? What do you mean by deleting a collection? Deleting a collection means clear is the option, clear of the collect name, which will clean out all the data in the collection. You said that when we debug, it shows sensitive information too. Can we mask or hide something from logging it? Unfortunately, no, Rajesh. Unfortunately, no. That is the reason it warns you before. When you are sharing with somebody who is not supposed to look at the data, please don't do that. At this stage, when you call the data, when you perform a data operation, it will get the data and it will plonk then and there. So you can see that data. Unfortunately, there is no masking as of today. That's a good question. Can we add the errors to application insights from monitor screen? Awesome. Prove you're good. You're asking all genius questions. Yes, if we don't want to lose the transcript, what the next step is, you can implement another level of adding these errors or exceptions by adding exception, exception case, like the way how I have implemented in my case. If you see here in my app, I have implemented exception handling, right? So here I can in fact add my exception onto a particular SharePoint list or a Dataverse table, depends on the user's licensing. If user has Dataverse licensing, I can add that exception into a Dataverse table, or if user doesn't have that, I can as well create a SharePoint list and add all the exceptions into a SharePoint list. That is how I can always be intact with whether the app is performing as per the expectation or not. And if there are any exceptions, that time I can store my exceptions for as long as I want. Somebody else asked that question, how long these errors exist. That is the another way you can handle or store the exceptions uh, into a different list or a table, and that will stay there forever. Any other questions? How many of you started using responsive containers in Power App? Start using that. That is going to be a killer, because there you will get to know how you can make your app responsive on both Windows and sorry, on a desktop and a mobile also. If you are experiencing any challenges in responsive containers, how to implement responsive container with a single control, I have explained in my YouTube channel. Just go there, you will see how to add each and every control, uh, each and every control, and how to make those controls responsive, and how to make a gallery responsive. Because when we add elements into gallery behaves different. Gallery, usually we add many number of columns, say like 8 to 10 columns in the gallery, but when it comes to mobile, it gets squeeze. It is very hard to look into it. But how to make that gallery responsive, how to make gallery read clearly, how to make the gallery to read clearly, I have explained in my YouTube channel how to create that. Those who are interested to learn new topics, there I always go to community. I spend every day in community to understand what are all the pain points my fellow makers are experiencing. I always take that challenges, and then I create videos in my channel. Videos are only the pain points, or the frequently asked questions in the community. So that is how I'm keeping up my channel. Any tips of look and feel of Power Apps, for example, use of fluent design in Canvas? Victor, good question. So how we can do that is, UI is always depends on the maker. If maker has great UI, what you call knowledge, and they if they want to paint their screen colorfully, it up to them. As of now, there are no guidelines from Microsoft that it should use only this way. The debugging process is same for portals as well. Unfortunately, at this stage, it is not extended up to portals, Suyesh. Uh, Not sure, probably going forward it will come. Thank you, Priyesh. Portals, it is debugging is not yet enabled for portals as of today. Any more questions for me? You can ask me even on Power Automate if you have any questions on Power Automate as well. Code which you just showed is the best way to handle errors like try and catch. Yes, try catch exceptions. In fact, I have explained that also on my channel. Let me show you what are all the content on my channel. If you see here, this is the content I have my channel. In fact, I have explained how to reduce loops in Power Automate to save your API calls. Those who don't know what is API call means that each and every action you include in Power Automate is an API call, and it is going to be expensive when you add more and more calls. And reusable code blocks, because what is reusable code blocks in this? Have a look. That is again a killer, because I can create custom functions in Power App and use that is how I can implement reusable code blocks. And I have explained exception handling in Power Apps. This is where I have explained everything. Yes, that is the best approach and Microsoft preferred approach to handle exceptions in Power Apps. This is where I have explained each and everything. In fact, I have explained how to handle exceptions in Power Automate. Power Automate exceptions also you can handle that. Is there a way to convert an existing Canvas app tablet responsive to mobile? It is possible. It is absolutely possible, Mr. Aman, but it requires a little bit of additional knowledge, because I have to export the package. I need to change the manifest.json file. In that manifest.json file, there are some parameters I need to change. Usually, when you create an app, all the app level settings will be there. Wait and watch. That is my next video. I'm going to explain how to tweak on that manifest.json file. Thank you, Krishna, for sharing the below information. Followed you on Twitter. Thank you, Bharat. Thank you, Rajesh.
Well, thank you, Krishna, once again. And please remember to share your YouTube channel with all that beautiful content you've created. Feel free to share in the chat as well for those people who are accessing via the chat. That would be great. So, Krishna, any final comments before we hand over to the next session?
Oh no, I'm good. Thank you. One thing I just wanted to say, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you all who have attended my session. Thank you for good questions. If you have any questions on Power Apps, I always open my hand for my fellow makers. So this is my contact information. Uh, I am highly active on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can reach me on those channels. As and when I get time, I'll try to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks once again, Krishna, all the way from the USA. Thank you, Krishna.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to help my fellow makers. Once again, thank you all for your time and support.